Hello, everyone. So today we have David Atkins with us. He's the CEO of Adalo. In short, Adalo is a platform where you can make apps without coding. Yes, you heard it right, without coding. So, hi, David. I welcome you to my show at Behta Pani.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, as I mentioned to my audience, that Adalo is a platform to make apps. Could you elaborate a bit that who should make apps?
Yeah. So the kind of crazy thing is that now anybody can really make apps. I know it's like maybe a little bit of a cop-out answer, if you will, but I think what we're seeing is, previously you had to really make sure that you had an amazing idea for an app, and you kind of had to have some development skills, or you had to have a lot of money to be able to pay to make an initial version of your app, right? Like you either have to really feel confident that that app was worth $60,000 to have people build it,
true, yeah.
or you had to have some friends or have some connections to people to build it. But now what we're seeing is that you can get started completely on your own. So that might mean I have an idea for a startup that maybe I want, and maybe it's a great idea, maybe I don't know yet, right? I'm not willing to gamble that much amount of money on it, but now I can actually start and see. You're also seeing small businesses that again, in the past, let's say, for example, I'm a small gym, and maybe I have 100 clients that I see on a regular basis, and I'm emailing them workouts to do, right?
Yeah.
Is that really worth spending thousands and thousands of dollars to build an app for? Maybe not, but now that you're able to do it yourself, or you're able to also get someone else to build it for you at a more responsible rate. And we'll get into that in the future as well. We also are seeing actual designers and more like freelancers starting to build for people on our platform. We can talk about that.
Okay.
And then I would say the third group is really your larger business, maybe more on the enterprise level, and they're building apps for a couple different reasons. One would be if you have an internal process that you're running, and you can think about like anytime you're doing something on a spreadsheet and email, and then maybe you're messaging that back and forth to different people in your office, right? Maybe you have a feedback process where you're emailing someone to get approval over here, and then that goes into a spreadsheet, or maybe you're talking with your maybe you're talking externally to some of your customers through those things and in those systems. It can be really easy now to make very simple apps that, again, in the past, like those larger companies would have either had to have one of their internal developers, build those things. And those developers are probably more focused on the actual either product, if they're a product company, or dealing with larger IT issues that sometimes it can be hard to justify that spend for the marketing team or the HR team to have an app. Like that wouldn't make sense, right? But now it's actually possible to do those things. So it kind of does run this full spectrum now of, I have a startup idea that I have been kicking around. I want to try. I'm a small business. I want to communicate with my customers in a better, more efficient way. Or maybe I'm a large enterprise and I need an internal tool. Or maybe I'm a larger enterprise and I'm operating like a startup. Like I want to try a new idea and not, invest all of the resources in it. So a lot of different people now kind of have the ability to do it. And you don't necessarily have to have the coding skills to do it.
That's one of the biggest advantages, I believe.
Yep. And you also don't have to have the either design skills, I would say, to do it as well. We at Adalo have tried to make it so that it's possible to drag and drop in building blocks and more of like components, so that these are already expertly designed for you, if you will. And so maybe you're not good with all the pixels of those things. And we also though also want to make it so that if you are a designer and you are that person who wants to change every last pixel that is possible. So we do try to make sure to balance both.
Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the lighter note, like when I was discussing this idea of Adalo with my wife, and then she told me like we can also make an app to do a wedding planning as well. So I mean, we
exactly.
have like in Pakistan, India, like you have like huge weddings where you have to invite a lot of people. So I think it would be a good idea just to have an app to invite people accordingly, when to invite and who to invite. So I think it would be a good idea as well.
Actually, that's crazy. Bring that up. So I don't think you even knew this, but I have my own wedding app for our wedding.
Really?
We're getting married in a couple of months. It is available on iOS and Android. Thanks. It's available on iOS and Android.
Nice.
I wouldn't advise. I mean, I guess you could download it, but mainly just our guests are. But so on that one. We've kind of built like a little mini social network inside of it as well. So there's the planning stuff, but then even our guests are downloading it so that they can post pictures, and especially it'll be really helpful that week when either we're getting ready or everyone's all over the place that weekend, and there's all these different things happening. So everyone kind of knows what's there. So
it's a broad perspective and broad usage.
Yeah, so you can even have personal apps now, which is a little crazy concept that like I might make an app for my family. But I think that we're going to see a shift in the way we think about apps today, right? I think most people still have a perception that an app needs to be something like a Facebook or an Instagram or a Twitter where you're going to have, 6 billion people download it, and that's the only way you're going to make money is through ads and through data that you sell and those types of things, right? Where it's like, no, it's actually now, especially with the cost coming down so much and you being able to make yourself, you really can make you can use, I think, what software is really intended for, which is like helping to solve, your own problems and those sorts of things. So I do think we'll see kind of a shift in the way that's, actually used, just like, when computers went from being big, huge machines that only scientists use when they were first developed, or mathematicians, right? And like then the personal computer came along, and people were like, "What are you doing? Why would I need a personal computer?" And now it's like, wait, everyone has a personal computer.
You cannot imagine a household without a computer anymore.
It'll be a similar shift between, you think right now, okay, apps are only for big, huge tech companies to design me something. It has to be in this massive scale of people, but it's like, no, like I can have a really small app for just my own little community or my own little business, and that's all possible now.
That's great. So that brings me to my second question, like, why is it important to make an app? Like, as a freelancer, as a business, what would be the advantage of making an app for your customers, or even like a low-end working environment where like maybe like 4 or 5 people are in the office, or in a startup environment? Why would it be so much important?
Yeah. So if you go back to that concept I talked about before about spreadsheets, right? So this is really weird, but throughout making all of this, throughout making Adalo, what I've realized is that actually all the software is actually just a spreadsheet, and it's really just spreadsheets of data, if you like can think about it. So for example, let's just take Instagram, for example, right? That's really just like if when you, they have like billions and billions of data, but if you look at it, right, like if you look at a spreadsheet, right, and the rows or the columns on top of it, right, there's like a bunch of posts that are saved, right? So and like that post has a bunch of different properties, right? It has an image, it has a description, it has like who liked it, it has what comments are for, right? So that's actually all just, you could display Instagram as only a spreadsheet. Now it would be a really awful experience, right? To see Instagram as just spreadsheet, but like I could look at Instagram as a spreadsheet and it would just say the number of like this many people have liked this thing, and it wouldn't be a good experience. So I think that's the biggest change here, is that if if Instagram is actually just a bunch of spreadsheets, but I would never, like, no one would ever use it if it was.
Yes.
So if you're doing things today that are in spreadsheets or that that probably is getting sent to multiple people, right? Like we were talking about wedding planning.
Yes.
You do wedding planning in a spreadsheet, right?
Yes.
Like here's the vendor who's going to be there.
Yeah.
And like that might be fine in a very small scale, right? Where it's just you in that spreadsheet. You're only going to use it for half an hour and then it's like not used, right? But if that process is that you're doing either like with a small group of people, right? So for example, you said, it's like I'm a small business, right? Well, like to go back to that gym example before, right? There was somebody who they used to send their workouts to their clients, and they would say, okay, today's workout, and they would look at the spreadsheet and they would be like, okay, there's this hip flexors and it's 14 sets and then this, right? And that's possible, but it's not the best experience because when I'm either working out or I want to see this, right? Like I don't want to look at a huge spreadsheet to do it. Like I would like to look at it. I'd like to watch a video to see like where I'm supposed to move my muscles and those types of things. And I only want to see the information that I need at that time. So I think why you would want to make something is because you have some process today, either like you were talking about that you're doing planning wise, that you're probably using something like a spreadsheet or maybe another platform that's tailored for, or that's not designed for your specific process, right? It's designed for like a spreadsheet is designed for like doing anything on, which is great, but also it's like, it's not designed for that process. And even some bigger SaaS companies, right? Let's say like a Trello or, some other type of like a Salesforce or a HubSpot, right? Those SaaS companies, they've designed it to work for lots of people, but you might have a very specific process that if I could create something that fit that specific process that interacted with multiple people, and I could show them what they needed to know at the time that they were doing it, it would be a much better experience. So that, I'm not looking at those rows and rows of data. I'm just like, oh, great. What I need to know is like that this new lead came in and I'm going to take action on it in some way.
I think it simplifies the continuous process, like the continuity of the process. It just becomes quite simple to follow and to give instructions as well. I think it's both and becomes a simple. That's so that's quite amazing. My third question would be how Adalo is helping other businesses or like business of other kinds to reach their audience.
Yeah, so a couple things in terms of businesses, right? So I guess it goes back to some of them are solving their own problems with Adalo, right? Maybe that's making an internal app for their HR team, or maybe they're making an app now that better connects with their customers for a different process. We also have an Adalo Experts program where now freelancers and designers are either agencies or they're just kind of freelance designers are now making apps for people as well. So we actually have people that have started up their own business on Adalo. And if you think about it, it's kind of crazy. So, but if you think about it, like that same trend has really happened with websites over the past, 15 years or so, right? Yeah. Like I would say 15 years ago, maybe I'm off a little by years, but let's say 15 years ago, you had to have a developer do it. And it was an expensive thing to have a good looking website, right? Well, now it's like, everyone has a website, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, like, young kids have personal websites and have branded themselves in different ways, right? Like they sell resumes on websites now, right? So, or small businesses now all have really nice looking websites. And that's mainly because those tools came around, Squarespaces, WordPresses, all those types of things that made it possible. But then also what happened from that is that you still had specialized people that were, let's say, a Squarespace or WordPress expert or a Shopify expert, and they would set up your site for you at a much more reasonable thing. Because there's still a lot of design either that goes into it, or thought leadership, in terms of I understand how apps work to set it up to make it function better than maybe you could. So you still have that happening. I think it's just because we're allowing for a lot more people to be able to make it, then your more of your local connections can now make it for people. So you can have your local, app builder, just like you have a local website builder that maybe is in the quote unquote coffee shop, that, is making it for, the local businesses around there. So I think there's going to be this huge wave of it's this big, huge next wave. And maybe some of those website builders will transition into being app builders. But I think now is an amazing time to get into these no-code builders like Adalo and some of the other ones, and, really be able to carve out amazing businesses for yourself. Because today, only 0.3% of the entire world knows how to code. So that's 99.7% of people don't know how to code, can't make what they need to make. So there's now, do 100% of the people in the world need an app? I know that's a different question, right? But there's definitely a huge amount of people that really do. So I think there's a big opportunity for you to even start your own business doing it.
Well, that's great. So when you talk about no code, what do you see about this in the future? When you say no code future, I've seen it on your Facebook as well. What do you mean by no code future?
Yeah. So this idea of no code is really a little bit vague right now, because the term really kind of just started in the last couple of years, I would say, in terms of it becoming an actual term that people have used to coin this. Obviously, like I was just talking about, website builders have been around for, 15 years or 10 years, right? And those are definitely no code, right? Because you built something that previously, the definition of no code is basically, it used to have to be built with code, and it could be built with code as well. And it technically is built with code, right? But the idea is that you're not actually writing the code yourself. So you're solving some problem that's unique to you that previously would have taken somebody, or still could take someone, to do that manually, but now you're doing it, through one of these platforms. So what we mean by the future is no code is partially a little bit of what we talked about, where there's going to be these shifts in, how we perceive what apps even are, right? It's going to affect lots of different people. And I talk about that a lot in the book and mini series, the future is no code, right? So in that, I asked a ton of different experts in this space, right? Because there's app building companies like Adalo. There's more e-commerce sites in this. There's website builders like Webflow. There are automation tools like Zapier, where that's where actually you can connect something to happen in this piece of software and have something else happen in a different piece of software. And now you can do that without code, where obviously before you'd have to write a bunch of scripts to do that. So now that's all possible. So there's even voice no code tools like VoiceFlow that you can make Amazon Alexa apps for, right? So there's this big huge thing happening. So in the book and mini series that I worked on, and the conclusion piece of that will be out at the end of June, but I went and asked all of the experts, what is this going to mean for designers? What is it going to mean for developers? What is it going to mean for startups and entrepreneurs? What is it going to mean for small businesses? What is it going to mean for enterprises, right? So this is going to affect, because now we're saying anybody can take something that used to be in some sort of spreadsheet or some manual process that you used to do. If you can now make that possible, there's going to be a lot of things that change because of that. So we were trying to go through all the different types of people and say how they would be affected.
Oh, that's nice. That's incredible. I want to ask something personal to you. What inspired you, or what is the thought process of Adalo, being Adalo right now? How do you come up with this idea? What inspired you?
Yeah, so I've always been extremely passionate about helping people bring their ideas to life. I can't code. So I actually started in architecture. I got my master's of architecture, and that's where I learned the power of design and really like taking that process of like, I have an idea sort of in my head or a problem that I've realized. Now, how do I bring that thing into reality? And then how do I scale that so that more people have whatever that solution is? So I've always been very passionate about that design process. So after school, I actually started doing UX design at a startup company here in St. Louis. And again, I couldn't code, but I started using, all of the prototyping tools. And I kind of watched over the years, those design tools, they used to be very, I guess to say this nicely, they used to be very ugly with what you could actually produce for them. When you would make mock-ups, right? If I have like an app, right, and I'm trying to make a mock-up of what it's going to look like, 10 years ago, they looked really gross. They were like really sketchy lines, and they were fine, but it was very difficult. But then, really that has accelerated a lot over the last 10 years, where today you can make really beautiful looking fake prototypes where I have to click on that certain spot and I have to go to this specific, like if it's an Instagram prototype, right? Like I'd have to click on this specific user, and like I could only post this specific image in this like fake flow. So I was actually a UX designer for a while, and I would present every week to our company mock-ups for what the next set of features would be. And they would all be fake prototypes. And it started to get to the point where they started to look so real that a lot of people in the company who weren't on the development team would think that they were real and be like, so this is like ready right now. And I'd be like, no. Like now the developers have to spend 3 months doing it. Right. Yeah. So I think it was moments like that that got me thinking like, wait a second, like it's so close to being real. Yes. Like, why can't we just do that last step? Like, what is the last missing step? Cause like, it looks totally real. So I can make it look real, but it's not. And then that's where you realize that the only big thing that was holding it back was being able to connect that fake prototype to actual real data. And again, that is the like magic of what no code is. There's like a lot of stuff that actually goes in to make that possible. Yes, but once we realized that was really the only thing that was missing, was like, if you could just put real data into that app, that would be possible. So that's kind of how it all started for me. Was like I still to this day, I can't make an app unless I use a platform like Adalo. So, I could design it beautifully. I could have like the best idea ever for some either, big new thing or just a small thing that I wanted to make, and I couldn't do it. So this was born out of me not wanting to learn how to code, and instead spending years and years trying to build a business instead. So maybe I just should have learned to code, and then I could just
But I can imagine but it's quite impressive that what you have seen, like what you saw as a need for yourself, you tried like, okay, this can be an idea, and you made it a reality out of it. That's quite impressive.
Thank you.
My last question would be, what would be your advice to people graduating right now, like students graduating in a scenario like COVID, freelancers or startups or having small business owners? What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, so I would definitely, if they're in the if they have the startup bug, right? Or maybe if they just have it like just a teeny bit, now is such a perfect time to really dive in and try that. Obviously, at any age you can do it, right? But I think if you're just graduating, it's such a perfect time to like really test out those things. And now you can do it on your own, right? Again, in the past, you'd have to either have a friend or be able to convince somebody, or have your own personal, $20,000 to build something that's possible. So if you do have that, I think it's not only possible to get started faster, but I think you're going to have a very important advantage with whatever that startup is on a no-code platform moving forward. And that's because you're going to be able to iterate a lot faster. So today, if you start building on it, as these no-code platforms like Adalo get better and better, one big advantage is that you're able to make changes really fast on those things, right? It wasn't just building the first version. Apps are more complicated than websites, right? You don't change a website that often, right? Like if it's a restaurant, that doesn't really change very much. I'm not changing my location, or if whatever I'm selling is not really changing very quickly. Now you're definitely making tweaks, and especially to get people to convert more sometimes. But apps change a lot, especially as people start using them, right? There's new features for everything all the time. Think about, all the apps, right? Snapchat, all those, they're always pushing out, oh, look at these cool new feature I got, right?
That's true.
So I think that they will have advantages on a no-code platform because they're going to be able to add those features a lot faster than, let's say, okay, I need to do a design for it. I need to go hand it off to a team of developers that you can make those things. So I think if you have that startup bug, I think that was an amazing time for those things. Again, we touched on it a little bit earlier. If you have if you like tech, and especially if you're a designer, even if you're just a graphic designer, those things, right? There's a huge shortage there's already a shortage of UX designers, but now if I'm saying that all of these, it's going to be possible for any company to have an app, like a small business or large businesses will have different types of apps. I think getting into this now, you'll have an amazing freelance or agency that will be started. We've had, like I said before, we've had tons of Adalo experts that, now they've actually left their companies and have full businesses from starting, which is a little scary for us, but it's like we have real businesses that have been started on Adalo. We even had apps like startups apps that have been acquired by other companies that have been built on Adalo. And that was kind of crazy that our first ever app that got acquired was last week. So that's kind of crazy too. If you are just starting, you can either have a whole career in this, or you can start your startup idea, or even if you're just into it, this is going to, I think there are going to be specific roles at larger companies that are all about no code in the future, right? Like we have an IT role, maybe, or, we have marketing roles, those sorts of things. I think there will be internal roles, whole, positions. I don't know the name of it, if no coder is actually the position that it's going to be at a company, right? But I believe that there will actually be positions at companies where your job is to find a process, either internally or a process that you're communicating with your customers in some way, and you want to make a tailored, specific software or app for whatever that process is, and that is what they will do. This role will do. So I think even getting into it now will, not that you have to have that role, but I think it will start your mind thinking of what's possible for these things, so that you can actually build those at your companies. And those companies that embrace this are going to move so much faster because they don't need to either hire an external development team, or they won't have to have their IT or own developers that have limited staff do it, right? You'll be able to think of a problem that's happening on, let's say, your marketing team or your customer support team, and you'll be able to make a solution for that on your own. So
that would be incredible.
Yeah, the more you understand about how apps work, the better you'll even start to realize, like, oh, I could have just, done an app for that, right? And I could put it together really quickly. So, yes.
That's great. So thank you, David, for taking out your time. We learned a lot. I mean, now I am actually inspired to make an app for my YouTube channel as well. So I will try it out actually on your platform.
Okay. Great.
Thank you for taking out time today, David. And I hope that all the viewers would be excited to use your platform and try it out their apps. Thank you for coming to Behta Pani.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. See ya.